What if I told you Xebec's plan involved activating one of the ancient weapons hidden at God Valley? By accomplishing this, he would have achieved his goal of becoming king of the world. What's up, One Piece fans? A while ago, I predicted that Kaido named king after his former captain, Rox, whose ambition was to become king of the world. I was partially right because we did find out in a mini flashback that Kaido did indeed give King his name, so what we eventually find out that it was because King reminded Kaido of Rox. I've had the idea of this video planned for a while now, and I'm hoping to raise your interest in Xebec and his crew after this video, so make sure to stick around to the end because I think I have a legitimate idea of what could have happened during the God Valley incident. Hit the like button to support the channel, and subscribe to the channel for future One Piece theories. Keep an open mind during this video because we are definitely going to get into speculation territory with the limited amount of information on Rox and his crew. So without further ado, let's get into the video. A while back, I made a video discussing the possibility that Lunarians may have once lived at God Valley, and now I know what you might be thinking. How is this possible? Didn't the Lunarians once live on the Red Line? So let's get into the recap on my theory, but before that, let's get into the necessary information and groundwork that we have and the limited information on Rox and his crew. When discussing Xebec himself, we have very limited information, but I do think it's important to state the facts that we have. According to Sengoku, the Rox pirates were once a group who came together at Fulale Island or Hachinosu for one big score. A powerful and dangerous crew with plenty of legendary pirates such as Big Mom, Kaido, Shiki, and Whitebeard. We know that Kaido put Luffy in the same vein as Rox along with Roger, Odin, Whitebeard, and Shanks. This is quite the company for Luffy to be entering, and Rox was said to have the ambition of a king. Sengoku even says that his goal was to become king of the world, and this makes sense because to be a captain of multiple conquerors in their own right, his ambition and willpower would have had to be respected by the members. A group known for being vicious even amongst their own crewmates, fighting and going for the kill against one another. So I imagine that Xebec demanded unimaginable amount of respect from his crew because he would need to be the one man that these insane pirates would put aside their differences for. The Rox pirates were considered a terrorist organization that opposed the world government. And the God Valley incident happened 38 years ago. Roger and Garp had to put their own differences aside to work together to stop Rox at God Valley. We had two Will of the members protecting celestial dragons and their slaves. Sengoku says that God Valley was an island that the government had wanted hidden and it was erased from history. Xebec's goal of becoming king of the world led him to break too many of the world's taboos. That is why the information on the Rox pirates has been so censored. Rox has the Will of D. He is one of only 8 members in the entire series to have been confirmed a Will of D member, and we know that Sengoku has knowledge on the Will of D. He is the one to first mention the checkered path. The Rox Jolly Roger appears to be a burning skull with a flame in the anime. Just throwing that out there because we will get into the importance of the symbol later in the video. We only got a glimpse of his ship, but I do think that it's important because after all, the name Xebec is a ship. We can see what looks like wings with his Jolly Roger symbol on the top. And we never saw his bounty, which was interesting because we even got Roger and Whitebeard's bounty reveals. Blackbeard, who chose Fulale Island or Hachinosu as his base, is theorized to have inherited the will of Xebec in some way, although whether it be through ideals, ambition, or a more personal connection is still unknown. His ship is called the Saber of Xebec. He also has the Will of D, and I won't go too far into Blackbeard right now, but we will be diving into Blackbeard later in the video. I just thought this was all worth mentioning because Fulale Island or Hachinosu, the Beehive Island, is known to be an island where the Davy Back fights originated, and it is a pirate island. And this pirate island was actually first brought up in chapter 306 by Nico Robin during the Davy Back fight against Foxy. Blackbeard claimed that Hachinosu was a pirate paradise. Similarly, we have Onigashima, another pirate infested island with a skull where Yonko chose to reside. Kaido claims that he went to Wano for a reason, and the new Onigashima project is creating a pirate empire and preparing for war. I think Blackbeard and Kaido are both mirrored in their inheritance of Xebec's will. Seeing how emotional Kaido got over his rival Big Mom being defeated by Long Kid, I wonder how Kaido felt when Rox was defeated at God Valley. We also know that Big Mom gave Kaido his devil fruit at God Valley the day that the Rox pirates were defeated. Big Mom says that Kaido owes her for life. And Kaido's devil fruit is definitely going to be important because not only is it a mythical fire-breathing dragon, but even Dr. Vegapunk was interested in the dragon fruit. Captain Rox D. Xebec is suspected to be dead and God Valley was erased, although there is a debate on if either of these statements are true. I suspect that Rox and Roger will be similar to how we see Luffy and Blackbeard. And finally, some important information on God Valley. In Japanese, God Valley is pronounced as Godobare, and it translates to Godo meaning God and Bare meaning exposed. So the God's land or the God's exposed. I also want you to keep this in mind because I also will be bringing this up later on in the video. So now let's get into my hypothesis. I believe that Rox discovered the truth about the Lunarians and their God race. I believe that they once lived at God Valley and may have been allies to the ancient kingdom. I also believe that the celestial dragons committed genocide against this race, and this was what once started the Great War during the Void Century. And this is the great cleansing that we've heard of, the first extinguished light. The second part of my hypothesis is that Rox found out about this and found out about Emu. He chose to push for one final heist for the ancient weapon Uranus, which was located at God Valley, and his final intention would be to activate it and launch a war against Emu or the celestial dragons. The only way to become king of the world would be to defeat the current ruler sitting on top of the throne. And so now let's dive into the Lunarians. Did you ever notice how the only characters in One Piece shown to know about the Lunarian race was Big Mom, Kaido, and Whitebeard? That's right, these three characters have a lot of things in common. They are all respected Yonko of the sea, they all have their own firm stance on racism, with Whitebeard accepting all races, saying that we are all sons of the sea. And Big Mom has been obsessing over each individual race, adding them to her family as if she's collecting them like Pokemon. And then we have Kaido having blatant racism towards humans and specifically being the leader of the Beast Pirates. The other most important similarity connecting these three is that at one point they were all members of the legendary Rox crew. So is it a coincidence that only members of the Rox Pirates were shown to know about Lunarians? Personally, I don't think it is, because we have just been getting into Lunarians and we just found out about God Valley incident during the Wano arc in the same arc. The only two other characters that have been shown knowledge about Lunarians was Marco and Queen, but these are two Yonko commanders, so it still fits this narrative. And we also see in King's flashback that Kaido recognized him as a Lunarian immediately after he saw him. How would he know what a Lunarian looked like? So do you still think it's a coincidence that even Whitebeard was shown to be reminiscing about the God race? A godlike race of firebenders that once sat upon the Red Line even before Marijois existed. I believe that they all got this information from the same source, and that is Rox D. Xebec. I believe that Rox told them about the god race, the Lunarians, or they discovered the truth about the celestial dragons cleansing the Lunarians at God Valley. Yes, I believe that the great cleansing was committed by the celestial dragons, and this could be pretty much obvious because we've seen a lot of hinting towards it. I go into this in much more detail in my past video on the God Valley race, but today I'll just give you the simple rundown. If you consider that God Valley is the land of the gods, or Godobare, the land where the secrets of the gods were exposed, and Whitebeard refers to Lunarians living on God's land, and we can also have the context of the true name of God Valley. If the celestial dragons who are the current gods wiped out the previous gods, there might be a poneglyph at God Valley that explains the history of what happened to the Lunarian race. There's no proof that there was a poneglyph at God Valley, but I do have a strong feeling that there was one because Rox read the truth. He had broke the taboos, and he was interested in breaking these taboos to become king of the world. And if the world government was trying to hide God Valley, this could be one reason why they were trying to hide it from the world. I think it's fair to assume that King's wings are a trait from his Lunarian heritage, especially when you consider the other wing races in the Nails cover story. Although technically the only confirmed traits of a Lunarian race are the ability to explode into fire and the durability to live under harsh conditions. The black wings, silver hair, and dark skin are speculated to be Lunarian traits as well. However, it could be that these are just specific to King, since it hasn't been officially confirmed, and King is the only Lunarian, so there's nothing to compare to in One Piece. And so now let's dive a little bit deeper into this extinguished light and the great cleansing. The Lunarians were once allied with the ancient kingdom. If you look at how important the moon is to the Minks and the Kozuki clan, I believe the Lunarians, whose name has the word moon in it, could be connected to them as well. I theorize that the term extinguished light is a callback to the Lunarian genocide. Queen and Big Mom hint at a genocide or cleansing of the Lunarian race. And the reason why I believe extinguished light is the key to this is because the Lunarians can combust at will and they have a fire on them that burns bright. This is the main trait that Whitebeard brings up. Fire representing the light would have had to been extinguished. It could be similar to a fire extinguisher. And if you look at the O'Harans, they were another extinguished light because they were 4 dangerous groups of people studying the void century and the ancient kingdom. These scholars were erased from history and the one that remained was Nico Robin. There is also a similarity to Nico Robin being the remainder of the O'Harans, and she is deemed the devil child. King is carrying on the will of the Lunarians and he is designed to resemble a fallen angel. So we have King of the Wildfire and then Nico Robin, the light of the revolution, the devil child and the fallen angel. And then recently in Wano we have even more to add to this because Robin has now been targeted by CP0 and we even see her in her demon form. And now moving on, let's talk about God Valley, God's Land, and Skypiea. We have God Valley or Godobare or the land of the gods where the secrets were exposed. However, there is another island in One Piece that has a God's Land, and that is Skypiea. From the very first chapters of Skypiea, we see dozens of god references. Entering the main land, we have Heaven's Gate, and then we have the citizens who resemble angels. Sanji and Luffy even mention that Amazon and Konis look like angels. We have the people who worship a kami or god, and then when entering the Cloud Waterfall elevator, we see the words God Land, Skypiea. The upper yard is known for where kami resides, and it is called God's Domain. We have Angel Beach, and there's Judgment, and many animals that represent gods or religious myths like the giant snake Nola or Kashigami, the cloud Kisune, and the giant lobster with God smacked right up on his forehead. We have sacrificial altars and human sacrifices to the sun gods based off the Mexican gods that were worshipped by the sun temples. We have religious trees worshipped by the people of Shandor as well. How about the Divine Squad or God's Guards? And the nails of text being named after lightning gods and plenty of other religious references and lore in Skypiea. So if anything is the most godly land, it is Skypiea. With God Valley and God's Land, could there be a connection between the two? And another coincidence that could be is that Shandor disappeared after Nolan found it, a place that was most likely hidden and away from the entire world, and also a place with ties to the ancient kingdom, with the Golden Bell, the ancient ruins, the sun god, and the poneglyph that Goldie Rogers signed. Shandor was launched into the air after Nolan found it and after he claimed that he had discovered it. This always seemed very suspicious to me, but in the anime, in the manga, it is just seen as a coincidence. And remember, we have a similar idea where God Valley is hidden and then it's found and then it is erased after the God Valley incident. I figured that there could be a connection between Skypiea or God Valley, or at the very least, Oda may be drawing parallels between the two islands. Goldie Roger connected to the God's Land, and then we will also have Rocksteady Xebec, who is known and famous for the God Valley incident. And this could be the checkered fate that we always hear about, and they were both enemies with the Will of D. And so moving on, let's talk about Marshall D. Teach. A massive question I've always wondered that's never been answered is, has it ever been explained why Blackbeard was at Jaya? During the Straw Hat's journey to Jaya, this is where we first meet Blackbeard or Marshall D. Teach. Let's take some time to consider the few key aspects to Blackbeard's character. He is the foil to Luffy, and this is shown from the very start. They are on a similar path, and more importantly, Blackbeard is very similar yet so different from Luffy. From a passionate dispute over a simple cherry pie, we realize that these two captains have so much in common, but their differences really stand out because of this. It's clear to me that Oda was always setting up Blackbeard to be one of Luffy's greatest enemies from the start. Once again, Luffy and Blackbeard are very similar to Rocks and Roger. So something as important as the very first island where Blackbeard is introduced and where he meets Luffy, I think we will realize one day that this interaction was a lot more important than we once thought. You might think that he was just looking for a pirate with a high bounty, but if Blackbeard is as strong as he says, why doesn't he go searching the new world? It may also be a coincidence or destiny that these two met here, and while it may be as simple as that, we know from my previous video titled The Straw Hat's True Nature how important destiny and fate is to both Luffy and Blackbeard. I think it's destiny that they first met here, but I also do think Oda purposely chose them to meet here for a reason. And I think there could be a lot more to dissect that Oda had been hinting at from the beginning. Blackbeard is the one who eggs on Luffy and encourages Luffy to achieve his dreams, and he is the one who claims that Sky Island exists to Nami and Luffy. And when Luffy escapes the knockup stream, Blackbeard says how he believes Luffy and his crew are still alive, and keep in mind that this entire time Blackbeard and his crew had been testing the Straw Hat's luck from the beginning. If the knockup stream is supposed to make it where you either die or live, Blackbeard knew that it was Luffy's destiny to make it to Skypiea. So is it possible that Blackbeard was in Jaya because he had just returned from Sky Island, or maybe he was considering going to Skypiea, then he realized it was actually Luffy's destiny all along. It's also very likely that Blackbeard was simply just in Jaya because it is a pirate island, and we know that Blackbeard has his own pirate paradise, the Fulale Island in the New World. But what if Blackbeard was searching for God Valley instead of Skypiea? We know that God Valley had been missing, so maybe he thought it was one of the islands that was in the sky. And with what we know about Blackbeard being meticulous about each and every move, he planned the entire Warlord Impel Down situation, the Marine Ford thing, so it's likely that there could be a bigger reason of Blackbeard being first introduced in Jaya and him having a reason for being there. In the chapter when Blackbeard and Luffy first met and argue, Bellamy interrupts and then we see him with one eye. This might only be symbolism to show that Bellamy was not a believer of Jaya, the island with one eye, and Luffy is. Because we do see Luffy with one eye open when he winks on the cover of volume 27. But interesting enough, in the Jaya arc, we also have a scene where Luffy and Blackbeard are both shown with one eye each and the second half of their faces covered. So what if God Valley is the missing eye of Jaya, with Shandora and Upper Yard being also another land of gods? If I am right about the Lunarians being from God Valley, it would fit as they were gods at one point, because Jaya is also out of the world government's reach, and Oda makes sure to point this out. And now finally, I'll give you my last prediction. I believe that Blackbeard has either already been to God Valley, and if that's not the case, I believe that Luffy and Blackbeard will finally face off in God Valley when they do meet up in the future arcs. And now let's talk about Marijois, God Valley, and the Redline. I know many people will say that God Valley can't be where the Lunarians live because they lived on top of the Red Line. But at this point, with Kaido levitating islands, ripping them straight out the ground, Whitebeard having the power to destroy the world, we have the ores known as continent pullers, and there are plenty of other possibilities as to why God Valley was not on the Red Line. Think about how Shiki, who was in the Rock's crew, could also levitate chunks of the earth. Whitebeard even says it was long before the Celestial Dragon's rule, so if the Lunarians lived there long before, this would have had to been at least before or during the Void Century, because Marijois and the Celestial Dragons formed after the Void Century had already ended. We have seen how Marijois is not natural. From the trees and the rivers, this proves that Marijois has a terrain that was created and most likely due to slaves. God Valley could have once been exactly on the Red Line where Marijois is placed, and then they built on top of it when God Valley was either ripped out of the Red Line or destroyed by the Celestial Dragons. And so if God Valley was not on the Red Line at some point, it's possible that it was simply the island where the remaining Lunarians had escaped to and lived. Some of them would have had to survive because we know that kings still exist. And if it was once on the Red Line, it's possible that God Valley was similar to Marijois, a man-made city for the gods, and then the Celestial Dragons decided to destroy it and then build on top of it where it once was. If we consider the possibility that Lunarians were able to live in any terrain, we can wonder if they were able to live on the moon. This most likely doesn't affect a nail the same way as a normal person because he's made out of lightning, but for someone who does have a normal body, it's unlikely that they could survive on the moon. So Lunarians having this durable body is important because if they were persecuted, remaining Lunarians would have had to hide in some of the most remote islands ever. And so it's possible that God Valley itself could be an island with seemingly impossible terrain, similar to Punk Hazard or the Raijin Island. And I think there is an importance to bring up Marijois because we know there were Celestial Dragons and slaves at God Valley. The role of the Celestial Dragons is the most mysterious in this incident. We don't know what family of Celestial Dragons were at God Valley, we don't know why they were there or what they were doing. And we also know that there are good and bad Celestial Dragons. So now let me tell you my prediction and my theory as to why there were Celestial Dragons and slaves at the God Valley incident. And keep in mind that Roger and Garp were both protecting them even though they both are not cool with the Celestial Dragons in any way. Considering that the God Valley incident is one heist that would have allowed Rocks to become king of the world, I think the most likely outcome of the Celestial Dragons being at the incident is that Rocksteady Xebec and the Pirates of the Rocks crew had kidnapped the Celestial Dragons and their slaves. Now why would they do this? I believe that they plan to use them as hostages to get what they wanted and become kings of the world. This would make for a much more tricky situation for the world government. Rox D. Xebec having the will of D and a terrorist pirate, it's fair to say that he would not have any problem with doing this.
テロ組織のように世界政府に牙を向き政府だがその脅威だけは当時誰の耳にも届いていた
This event is so important because the God Valley incident would make it a situation where now Rox has the leverage over the world government, holding the celestial dragon's lives in his hands. This would be such a tricky situation that the world government was willing to cooperate with Go D. Roger, a temporary alliance as long as the celestial dragons are left unharmed and the Rox pirates were defeated. We know how serious of a crime attacking a celestial dragon is, so the government values their safety and protection over everything. This is the reason why celestial dragons were at God Valley and why Roger and Garp were both protecting them. It was such a disastrous event for them, and there's a possibility that they told Garp, if you don't help us with this situation, you will have to resign from being a Marine and become a wanted criminal for not protecting the celestial dragons. Now before I explain exactly what I believe happened at God Valley, let's discuss one more thing that is truly important to this theory. And now I'm talking about the ancient weapon, specifically Uranus, which I believe was at God Valley. Uranus is named after the Greek god who was the god of the sky or the god of the heavens. The heavens, the sky, and space all represent Uranus. The stars and planets as well, because many believed that the night sky was similar to a snow globe dome surrounding the world where the stars and planets were coated over the sky. Poseidon relating to the sea, the Noah and the Sea Kings, and then Pluton would most likely be connected to the ground of the earth, especially being connected to Alabasta and a desert island. And that leaves us with Uranus, a weapon that relates to the sky. I spoke of the possibility that the godland Skypiea could be connected to the God Valley. So this is where I came to speculate that God Valley contained the ancient weapons, Uranus. It's fitting that Uranus, the weapon that represents the heavens, named after the sky god, would be at God Valley if it is connected to Skypiea in some way. I believe that Uranus was sitting at God Valley, dormant, waiting to be reawakened. We know that Rox broke too many of the world's taboos, and the biggest taboo is researching the Void Century and the Ancient Kingdom, as we saw with O'Hara. Nico Robin is a devil child, her existence alone is a problem for the world government. Now imagine the one taboo that is more disastrous for the world government, and that is researching the ancient weapons. If Go D. Roger was interested in the treasures left behind by Joy Boy, Rox may have been much more interested in the immense power and the ancient weapons. We know that God Valley was an island that the government wanted to hide, and what would be more important to hide than the ancient weapon Uranus itself? The true reason the government always wanted to keep God Valley hidden from the world. And so finally, let's get into what I believe actually happened at God Valley.
ガープの名は世界に轟き、海軍の英雄と呼ばれるようになった。
I believe that Rox found out the truth about the ancient weapon Uranus being hidden at God Valley, and so he seeked it out and decided that he could use this to become king of the world. I believe that he also found out about the truth about the Lunarian race, and Rox's dream of becoming the king of the world was the motivation for this entire incident. The crew captured the celestial dragons and their slaves and held them hostage while they launched their heist at God Valley. If even one celestial dragon's life is endangered, it is now a top priority for the world government to deal with this situation. It's possible that the slaves were important slaves or more expensive slaves, like mermaids or giant slaves. See, this would make a lot more sense, as we know Roger and Garp would try to free the slaves if they had the opportunity. This specific slave may have been so important that even Garp would have had to restrain his urge. I've seen some speculation that Garp's wife was a slave that day. It is possible, but I guess we'll have to wait and see and find out. Rox D. Xebec understood that if he did get his hands on Uranus, it would be enough power to become king of the world and conquer the entire world government. And what could the government challenge this power with? He had powerful pirates on his side, and with Uranus, he would be completely unstoppable. His ambitions were so fierce that Roger realized, I have to do something about this now because he will destroy the world. And Garp had also come to this conclusion, even though he didn't want to save celestial dragons. So many innocent people would die if Garp and Roger did not team up, so they realized they had to put their differences behind, and someone as insane as Rox may have been even worse for the world than the celestial celestial dragons. You see, Rox needed proof of the treasure at God Valley to motivate his crew. He needed proof that the ancient weapons existed and were lying dormant at God Valley, and proof that the island even existed in the first place. So is it possible that Roger de Xebec himself was a Lunarian? With what we know about the Lunarians, if their wings are a trait that they have, I do think we will see a situation where a Lunarian cuts his wings off so he's not suspected and taken in for testing by the world government scientist. I do think it would be interesting if Roger de Xebec had a similar backstory to this. But if Rox isn't a Lunarian, I do think that he found out about the truth about what happened to their people. I think it's fair to say that Rox would have been extremely durable and respected from his strength alone. Being a Lunarian would give him the natural durability, and we saw with Zoro that Lunarians would be difficult to deal with because their abilities are unknown to most people. If you look at Rox Jolly Roger and shit, we notice a possible hint that he knew the truth about Lunarian genocide, or that he was a Lunarian himself, with the wings and the fire devil skull in my eyes definitely reminds me of King of the Wild Fire. And besides King, I do think that we need one more Lunarian that will be important to the overall story of One Piece, and I do think it will be connected to the Rox Pirates. And let's consider that a former god race would have left behind plenty of treasure, like some poneglyphs and just overall treasure if they ruled the world. This could have been the bare minimum of motivation for these top tier pirates like Big Mom and Shiki. In Jaya, we see how Blackbeard and Luffy, these top tier pirates, believe in these crazy ancient myths like El Dorado and the One Piece. So Rox would definitely have some kind of prize or some kind of motivation to get everyone on board with going directly at the world government. Think about pirates like Captain John, who was a member of the Rox Pirate and is known for his legendary treasure. It's possible that he got his treasure from God Valley, especially when you consider that Kaido got his devil fruit at God Valley. And we even have Boogie, who was on Roger's crew searching for John's treasure. So it's possible that Roger was the one who confirmed to him the importance of John's treasure. So now let's move on to the fights. I think the Battle of God Valley will start similar to how Roof Piece began, with a 5-on-4, a bunch of pirates and marines just going at it. Whitebeard was known to be in his prime around 2 years after the God Valley incident, so I always saw Whitebeard as the right hand man to Rox. I believe that Rox fought against Sengoku at God Valley. Aside from Roger, Garp and the Celestial Dragons, I believe that Sengoku himself was definitely present. The event this catastrophic would have made it mandatory for the most powerful Navy admirals to show up and combat the Rox crew. Sengoku is the one who seems to be well informed of this event, and sure, Garp may have told him about the details of it, but that's unlikely considering that Garp doesn't even like talking about it. Consider that Sengoku's devil fruit is a god fruit, the golden god Buddha. It would be more than fitting for him to have been fighting and living through the God Valley incident, and he is the one who is telling the story as if he was there. So out of every other character that we haven't been confirmed that was at the God Valley incident, I believe that Sengoku is the most likely. There's a scene when Roger is complaining and saying that the world government should bring Sengoku and Garp because they are more fun. Sengoku is most likely close to Garp's power as well as Roger and Whitebeard's. And we also have a history between Sengoku and Whitebeard as we saw them both lead the opposing forces during the Paramount War. Sengoku must have fought against Whitebeard many times, but during the God Valley incident, when Whitebeard was nearly entering his prime, this would have been a true battle between Sengoku and Whitebeard. When Sengoku says that Whitebeard had the power to destroy the world, I believe that he witnessed firsthand that day the full effect of Whitebeard's power. I think it would be perfect if Garp was known for capturing Roger and then Sengoku was known for his victory against Whitebeard in the Paramount War. So you might have two sets of rivals within the Marines and the Pirates. And we even saw the reveal of Whitebeard and Roger's bounties side by side during the God Valley incident chapter. What I picture happening was Roger and Garp may have been fighting against Rox for some time together, but then they eventually were able to regain the hostages, and Roger told Garp to trust him as he would be able to finish off Rox on his own. Because for Roger and Rox, it was a much more personal battle as his greatest enemy. We know how characters like Luffy are. Look at Luffy and Wano. It started out as a full-scale brawl and eventually it ends up being a 1 versus 1. I do believe that Roger was stronger than Garp, although I do see that many people will say that Garp could have been equal to Roger. I think it's fair to say that Silver's Rayleigh was definitely there and was able to handle one of the top tier Rox members like Shiki. I do think it would be more interesting if the Dark King, Silver's Rayleigh, actually fought against Silver's Axe. And since we have Garp and Sengoku at God Valley, I think it's fair to throw in Suru. I think Oda would put her up against Big Mom simply because they are women, but this is a battle where I do believe that Big Mom would easily be able to beat Suru. I'm sure that Copper's Gaban had his own 1v1, knowing how Oda likes to write fights, although for this one I'm not exactly sure who he faced off against. I also wonder if Kong was at God Valley, because with an event like this you might just have to send a fleet admiral. And if he was at God Valley, I would love it to see if Rocks straight up defeated Kong in a one-on-one. I'm honestly not sure, but it is possible considering that this was the event where Garp became Hero of the Navy, or it might just be a situation where Garp got all the recognition and all the credit for what him and Roger did combined. Finally, I want to bring up one last character that I believe was at God Valley, and that is Monkey D. Dragon. It's been hinted that Dragon might have once been in the Marines, and knowing Garp, he would have wanted Dragon to join the Marines. We even saw Dragon have a calm conversation with Smoker as if they knew each other personally. Dragon also said that the world government is not the enemy, they are declaring war on the celestial dragons. Dragon would have been 17 years old at the God Valley incident, and I predict that he fought against Kaido. We have Kaido, who obtained the dragon fruit that day, facing off against the Will of D member, Dragon. Dragon seems to have some kind of connection to Gold D. Roger, because the first time that we see him, he is shown in the manga and is introduced with an inherited will quote by Gold D. Roger. And when we see Dragon at Gold D. Roger's execution, this was the last time Smoker ever saw him, and we saw that Dragon is the second to last character shown, even shown after Shanks. The only character to be shown with more importance to Goldie Roger that day was Porges de Roge. And is it possible that if Garp trained Dragon, then he may have faced against the Roger pirates many times? If Dragon was at God Valley, it would make a lot of sense because Dragon representing a god in Eastern culture. This may have been the moment where Dragon began to look up to Roger, and with Rocks exposing the truth about the Lunarians or the ancient weapons, he may have started to question the celestial dragons and the world government. At this moment, Kaido is using his devil fruit for the first time, so he may have not been able to fully control it, so it may have been a way that Monkey D. Dragon had a bit of an advantage. It's possible that Kaido's devil fruit is Uranus, as it can levitate islands into the sky. However, I'm not fully convinced of this, and I'm not a fan of devil fruits being ancient weapons. It is possible that Rocks died that day, but we also don't know for sure because Sengoku paints it as a connection between the disappearance of the island and the correlation of the government wanting to keep it hidden. So it's possible that the government essentially ordered a buster call since it was erased, and we know that Monkey D. Garp was always a vice admiral. And there's also the possibility that Whitebeard may have destroyed the entire island, or maybe Kaido levitated it, or Shiki. We never know. With all these crazy figures, I could definitely picture the island being destroyed. And if Whitebeard destroyed the entire island, you can see why maybe Kaido perceived this as him betraying him. But it could have been Rocks who told his right hand man that he is likely to go down with the ship, so he told him to kill him off and bury this treasure with him. There's also been a lot of talks about betrayal within Kaido and the Rocks crew. If Rocks did actually awaken the ancient weapons, and he was also on the verge of death, maybe Whitebeard realized this weapon was way too powerful, so he had to destroy God Valley and end up killing Rocks in the process. Whitebeard may have trusted Rocks with the ancient weapon Uranus, but if it got into the hands of the celestial dragons and the world government, it would all be over. This is a possible scenario, and it's also possible that Kaido just raged out and destroyed the entire island after he saw Rocks die. Another reason why I think that Rocks may have been a Lunarian is because we know that Kaido hates humans. I do think it would be interesting if he chose his captain to be a Lunarian, another discriminized ancient race of people who have been persecuted for years, similar to the Oni race, because we saw how they treated both Kaido and King when they were captured. But in the end, the Roger pirates helped the Marines to defeat Rocks and win this battle. They defeated the Rocks pirates, and so the Rocks pirates were eventually crushed at God Valley by Garp and Roger's combined efforts. Kaido may have also felt betrayed because if Whitebeard managed to escape, but he was captured and taken to some kind of facility to be tested on, he may have felt like he was stabbed in the back. And with Roger helping the Marines, this allowed him to walk away a free man, and then Garp may have thanked him the next time that they crossed paths. Finally, let's move on to Moria and Blackbeard. Moria is an interesting character because he has connections to Kaido as they clashed in Wano. He also had Oars and Ryuma's corpse, as well as many of the Rocks pirates. This lineup includes Captain John, Silver Axe, and Wang Ji. If Blackbeard and Moria bond over their fascination with Rocks de Xebec, I can see a situation where Blackbeard and Moria team up and they plan to put a shadow in Rocks' corpse. Moria having his previous crew members may be foreshadowing to this event because we don't actually know for sure what happened to Rocks. But I do think that Luffy and Blackbeard will fight at God Valley if Blackbeard hasn't been there already, and another theory is that Blackbeard is preparing to commit the next God Valley incident, gathering his base at Hachinosu similar to how Rocks did. And this cannot be a good sign to Sengoku, who is the one who says you must know your history to predict the future. In his eyes, he may see this as the next coming of the Rock's pirates. Sengoku is aware of the checkered fates and does not believe in coincidences, so do you believe that Rock's Xebec may have had the Yami Yami no Mi that Blackbeard was always searching for? With Blackbeard's influence and similarities to Rock's, it would be fair that the most dangerous pirate had what Blackbeard considered the best devil fruit. It's also possible that a drunk Whitebeard may have told him some of these stories about Rock's in the past. And finally, I would like to consider the final possibility, the possibility that Rock's learned of Emu's existence. Because to become the king of the world, Rox would have had to defeat Emu and dethrone him. Learning of this would be even more unimaginable than learning about the taboo of the ancient weapons in the Void Century. He may have even learned about Emu's existence from a poneglyph at God Valley. But anyways guys, that is my prediction on what will happen at God Valley and what we will see in a flashback coming soon, maybe with Kaido, we never know. Hopefully we will be getting more information. I believe that Rox declared war at the world government like a terrorist organization, like Sengoku says. He grabbed some celestial dragons and their slaves, he wanted the ancient weapon Uranus, and his crew members maybe wanted to see it and get some treasure for themselves. I do think there's a connection there between Rox Xebec, the Lunarians, and maybe he figured out the truth about how they were genocided. And then when Rox was about to awaken the ancient weapon Uranus, Roger realized he had to step in and defeat Rox before this all got out of hand. The possibility that Rox could destroy the world and conquer with one of these great powers in his hands could have been an even worse possibility than having celestial dragons rule the world. The poneglyphs, the ancient weapons, the Lunarian genocide, I believe these are what the great taboos are that Rox discovered. But anyways guys, what do you think happened at the God Valley incident? Is Rox a Lunarian? Is there connection there? Did Whitebeard or Shiki or Kaido move the island to a faraway place waiting to be discovered? Let me know in the comments. I know I made a bunch of bold claims, but I'm just trying to piece together what I think could have happened. I find Rox to be one of the most interesting characters in the entire series. But anyways guys, make sure to hit that like button if you did enjoy the video, subscribe for more future One Piece content, and make sure you stay safe and have a great day.